Welcome to Modern Alchemy Podcast. Today we have a special guest. We have Lilit Sarkissian. Lilit is a multidisciplinary artist and spiritual entrepreneur. She's the owner of The Little It Dong Depot, a collection of adult coloring books and notebooks. She has 5-star reviews on Amazon, Etsy, and TikTok Shop. The Amazon reviews titles were So Much Fun, The Peak of Gift Giving, Best Adult Coloring Book Ever, Great Quality, Hilarious, and So Much Fun. And oh, fun are they. One title is called Happy Peens, Weens, and Willys Coloring Book, a coloring book with a sense of humor and a touch of body positivity. In the description, it says, this slightly inappropriate coloring book contains some of the happiest Peens, Weens, and Willies you will ever see. They're wearing costumes. They're doing yard work. They're masquerading as Renaissance portraits and overall just being little rascals. Lilit has a very rich story, one that I find completely inspiring. This episode is for anyone looking for a sign to start bettering themselves and their future. Welcome to the show, Lilit.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
We're so happy to have you.
Oh, yeah.
Lilit and I met on TikTok, and I've been fangirling over her ever since. I kept hearing her voice in my head, color that wang. She's embarrassed, but it's incredible because her story is a story about perseverance and connecting in with self and truly finding what lights you up and what your alignment is, that flow state. So I want to just dive right in. I know everyone's dying to know how the Little It got started, but before we dive into conception of the business, can you first share your story of misalignment? Because I know we had discussed that in the beginning, before this all started, you went through this period of having it all set up, doing all the right things, but it wasn't working for you.
Yeah, growing up, especially as an immigrant, my parents came in, immigrate, and they just started working the first week or two we were here. They both got jobs. They were working. So my sister and I, our jobs were we were just supposed to be good kids, So I did everything. I got it was so weird. When you're a kid, everything's kind of mapped out for you. So you get into the college, you get the job out of college, you do it. And then so I was doing it, but it wasn't working. And luckily for me, I have a very vocal body. She does not tolerate any bullshit. Can I say that on here?
Yes, you could say anything you want.
But she really won't let me get away with anything. So I started to just get really sick in my corporate job. And I would burn out so quickly, and it's so weird. I know that I'm an effective person. I know I'm very capable, but I was at these jobs where everyone thought I was amazing. It was kind of sweet, but I don't think I was, and I hated every second of it, and I did not make it a secret. I would go into office meetings and be like, we're here again, huh? I can't wait until I quit, and everyone would be like, ha, 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 ha. And they would just keep going, and I was like, I have a headache, my neck hurts, I can't do this anymore. So after I was able to kind of, this entire time I was not making any art. Once I stopped pursuing art, I got lost in the corporate world. First, I was event coordinating. And then I was doing recruitment coordination. I had a very fancy title with upward trajectory. It was everything that I was told that I was supposed to do. But yeah, my body broke. I had all of these autoimmune symptoms come up, and slowly during that time, I also became very spiritual, and I think just continue to become spiritual as the days go by. So eventually I was able to save up enough money, and life was able to kind of set me up in a way where I left my job. And after that, that's when creativity came back.
That's interesting that you worked in recruitment. I actually used to work in healthcare staffing. I was an associate director of a healthcare staffing, third-party agency for a long time.
So interesting. That's so funny we all did that. My goal when I started to work there was because they would pay for your education if you did a continuing education thing while you were working. So I was like, great, I'll do a part-time MBA. I'll get my MBA. I'll go into consulting. I am so glad I did not go into consulting. I bought those books to study for the
GMAT.
Yeah. And my intuition, I'm so grateful. I opened that book and I was just like, And it just sat there for years. And as I watched these students like graduate and then become disenfranchised with their own lives, just be like, oh, wow, it's the same thing after you career switch. I remember one day just like taking those books and just like giving them to one of the other people that wanted to study. I was like, here, like you can have these. I'm not going to do this anymore. And it was such a relief to know that I was not going to have to do that.
Something that I wanted to circle back to, we were talking earlier and you said that you kind of have these psychic abilities that you would practice. So you didn't actively know you were psychic, but you knew you had this sixth sense or something. And then how would you apply that when you were talking to all these people?
So truly, I had no idea. And I also, I knew I was kind of a witchy person growing up. I've been witchy growing up, but not particularly spiritual. And so around when I was 26, 27, all of this turned around. I remember I was just trying to delay doing work. So I was doing random journal prompts. I would just close my office, schedule a meeting, and then I would just journal because that way I didn't have to work and I hated my job. So I was journaling and the question of the day was like, you believe in astrology? And I was like, well, no, that's stupid. But I was like, well, let me make sure I'm going to have to work if I don't answer this a long time. So then I looked it up and it said something about cusp signs. And that would mean that I was a Capricornarius, a Capricorn Sagittarius cusp. And that one applied way more. So slowly from that day, I felt myself just fall deeper and deeper into the spiritual hole, but I had no idea that I was intuitive or had any of these nonverbal communication forms within me, So when I would meet students, it's not that my favorite thing to do, I call it guessing, but it's like very educated guesses. So I would meet them and it would be kind of what I told you with that recruiter from AT&T, like you can get a vibe off of someone when you meet them. And then since I was practicing, I had no ego in it because I was just trying to make conversation really get through the day. So I would meet someone and I'd ask them a few questions and I'd be like, are you a data analytics student? And they'd be like, yeah. How'd you guess that? And I'd be like, you're too social to be in finance, but you're not social enough to be in marketing. And then we would both kind of laugh. So it would just be fun little guesses like that. Or they would tell me which interviews they had lined up. And then I would just like to look at them on the page and see which one kind of stood out to me. And I'd be like, I bet it's going to be this one. And then I'd be like, tell me if it's this one. And then sometimes they would come back and tell me, So it was really just a guessing game I played to keep myself entertained.
In this time, you're working in this corporate job, you're going into fake meetings, writing journal prompts because you don't want to be working. You had mentioned to me that you were out of alignment. I think when people are in something so hard, they're just like, oh, I hate my job. They're not aware of the misalignment. So at that time, did you know you were out of alignment? I know your body was talking to you. I'm just curious about those signs or those aha moments when you were like, this isn't working. I'm out of alignment. And like when you kind of woke up to the point of like, this isn't for me anymore.
What a good question. I think back then, since I didn't really have a scope of what was happening, everything just seemed bad. It was like, why is this the worst time of my life? And then because I was having such a hard time, I think it forced me to reach out to like just potential, maybe like spiritual solutions, just because my body hurt. My friendships weren't doing great. Like I didn't like my job. I think I was living with a roommate that I like didn't really get along with at the time, which rarely happens. So it really was a misalignment. We're great friends now, but all this stuff that was going badly, and it was really hard not to fall into victim mindset with all of it. So I remember one time I found this YouTube tarot card reading, and it was one of those random, this is for you, you'll see it kind of things. And this is before that existed, it's before TikTok. So I decided to watch it, and this woman was so interesting. She basically guessed that it was around the time of my Saturn return, which I didn't know was the thing back then, but it definitely was all starting. It was all bubbling up. And she basically said that this next handful of years is going to be very hard, and it's going to seem like everything's falling apart. But she said this word, I don't know what language it's in, but she said piala. I remember it perfectly. And she was like, that's what we call a bowl. Basically take your piala and just fill your bowl. All you have to do is put your head down and put the work in, and it'll all come together amazingly after a few years. That you just have to suck it up and take it for the next few years. I kind of like honest feedback like that, and I was like, okay, all right, fine. And then it kind of empowered me to take a little bit more responsibility. I didn't realize the misalignment until I started to align. I first started to change my diet because I was having so many autoimmune issues that I just needed to get my body not inflamed, feeling happy. And it took me maybe a year of trying out a million different cleanses. But throughout that process, I was already starting to feel better and getting to know myself better, getting my diet under control. During that time, so many friendships were kind of bubbling up and all of this stuff was happening. So the friendships all kind of fell by the wayside, the ones that were supposed to, and things fell apart, but they felt better as they were falling apart. But I kind of had that feedback in the back of my head where I was like, okay, well, it's just going to be like this for the next while, but it's going to be worth it. I just have to put the work in. And that seemed to really help. So by the time I was 28 or 29, all of that hard work had really paid off. And that was the year I ended up quitting my job too.
What did your friends and family say when you were like, I'm going to quit my job? Or did you not tell anybody? Because I had a lot of negative reactions from people when I told them, I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit my job in 6 months.
I bet you
Everyone's
did.
like, what?
Well, people are so like connected to the 3D, you know, we hang on so tangibly to everything that we have in this world. And again, I didn't know back then, but I was just like, fuck this place. I don't care. I could not earn another penny. I'll just go get another shitty job like this one. It's fine, but I have to try because I just needed the break so badly. My heart needed it. But my family was really supportive. They always have been with that stuff. They were like, you don't like it, leave. We'll support you. We'll help you in any way you can. We can. And then some friends were just like, okay, are you sure you want to leave? It's a really good job. And I was like, yeah, I can't stand it anymore. And they'd be like, okay, you could hear the doubt, but everyone was at least supportive in whatever way they could be.
Yeah, I remember when I told my dad, and so my dad grew up on a farm and he'd been working since he was literally 5 years old. And I mean, not really, but he'd like help his grandpa like sow their plots or whatever the hell they did. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to leave my job. He's like, did you get another job? I was like, no, I'm just quitting. And he's like, do you have something lined up? I'm like, no, I'm just exiting the corporate workforce. And I just watched he's also an 80-year-old dude. Like my dad's fucking awesome. Love the guy. But it's just such a concept that most people are not like, it seems strange, especially if you're making good money and like you're on the rise or whatever, you know?
Did he go, awooga with the eyes?
I literally watched him download and process it. And I was like, it was just like a concept that he just hadn't considered, you know? And he's, you know, I think people back then, they'd work at jobs 20, 30 years and that was like just what you did, you know? But now it's kind of like, there's so many options, especially with, you know, TikTok and the internet and like streamers that make 7 figures playing fucking Fortnite. So we got to go play Fortnite. That's the whole moral of this, what I'm saying right here.
You can play it.
Crazy.
I'll support you. I'll join your lives.
By the way, it would be hilarious somehow becoming famous as a 40-year-old man and all my fucking fans are 13 years old. That might be dicey.
I love that for you. Why not?
What's really cool though is that your family was like, yeah, go pursue your passion. Do your parents have an entrepreneurial background, or do you have an entrepreneurial background of people in your family? Is that why they kind of understood what you're doing there?
Oh, what a good question. Yeah, my mom is very entrepreneurial. She also is very much like me in terms of just energy, you know, so she raised the monster she currently has. So we are exactly the same. And I think she understood it because she saw me burn out so bad. And I think I didn't really share a ton of my physical ailments and pain with them when I was growing up. But when it got really bad, I had to show them how much pain I was in, you know, so they just saw me crying all the time. I was so sad. And my mom was like, get out of there. If it's making you that sad, get out of there. And she's someone that's so in tune with her feelings. My dad is an engineer. I think he would have been more skeptical had I not been in so much physical pain. But he was just like, okay. He's also a very logical person. And I was like, look, this is how much money I have. This is what I have saved. This is my plan. I was like, I know this sounds risky, but it's not actually, because I have a plan A, B, and C. And worst case scenario, I'm an educated person. I can get a new job. And so he was kind of like, okay. But, you know, you can feel people are just worried for you because I don't think there's so much fear. Even in media, they're like, I can't lose this job. I need this job. The whole like job search is made to look so impossible. But I think even if you are going for a corporate job, it's a very spiritual process, almost like dating.
What do you mean by that? That's fascinating.
I've always associated dating with job interviews because it's like immediate vibes, right? Any one of us can get a job that isn't aligned with us. If you go for an interview, you're an educated person, you have a background, it's a job that you're going to be doing, like you can do, you can get that job. But we've all kind of had that experience where you go into a job interview and you love the interviewer, like you guys just have a million things to talk about. There's a back and forth, there's an energy. And you know that with that person, you're going to work well with them because the energy is just there. It's so much easier than with someone that's harder to communicate with in that way, you know, in an energetic way. And then so I've watched people get jobs just like I've watched people get in marriages that kind of were like going against the grain. It just was a lot more prickly to go through. Whereas if you jump into it with flow, you can go into it with flow. It's just how Christina and I met too. I feel like people come into your life just like jobs come into your life. So even if the 9 to 5 is right for you, you have to find a job that almost like places its way into your life in a joyful way, as opposed to you fighting for it and applying and sending out 50 applications a day and just killing yourself over it. Sounds like such a miserable way to get a job, and it continues into your work, I think.
What's really fascinating about that, I was so money motivated. I love money. I think we can all agree money's important, but that was my only motivation, especially during my corporate career. And I had it, and I've never thought about this until you said that. I had a job just kind of organically come into my life, and the guy was my boss. We got along really well, and the culture was really good for my personality. But then my money hungriness, I wound up leaving, and the next 2 jobs I took, which were like more money, I never got that same feeling. And had I just stuck around at that job and maybe just kind of slogged it out a little bit longer, probably would have wound up in a similar place, but been much happier. I think that motivator of this, maybe what feels good, is probably actually way more important, because I'm sure we've all been to this point where once you have a certain amount of money, you realize that that's not actually where joy comes from. You need to be at the baseline to take care of your stuff. But I had that same experience. I remember I was sitting in my living room, I was looking out the window, and I was like, I'm so fucking unhappy. And I had all this money that I thought would make me happy. But I think a lot of people should probably just work a 9 to 5, but make sure that they feel good about who they're working with, I guess.
That's why tech companies do so many rounds of interviews. They want to make sure your personality fits in, similar to dating, because you're spending so much time with these people. It's incredible.
Yeah. They do that, but have you ever noticed that in a relationship, the thing that breaks you up is the thing that you noticed within your first date? And I think that's the same thing with like job interviews too. You get the vibe off of the first interview, the first date. But then when you leave and you're like, can you believe it? They did this, that, and the other, but it was all the same thing. Dating and job interviews are the exact same thing, I swear, if we compare them. I always thought about like making an app that does both.
That's so interesting. I have thought also similar parallel to this, that the thing that you really like about a person is often the thing that you dislike later in the relationship. So these cute little quirky things in the beginning of a relationship, eventually you're like, I'm going to wring this person's neck if they do this thing that I once thought was cute ever again. Do you know what I mean?
It's like the things that are similar to what you do. I always find people that have qualities in myself, I find annoying when I see them exhibited back to me. Some are good, right? Sure. But it's like, it really, like, people always look for similarities, but actually you need someone who's the yin to your yang.
That totally makes sense. I just made a connection because basically if it's the thing that attracted you to the other person, it's like your opposite, right? It's your mirror, what relationships are meant to show us. But by the end of the relationship, you've hopefully healed through that block. That's why the relationship was like magnetized towards you. So then you like, I can't stand this about this person. I'm not like that at all, because you're not anymore.
Oh, yeah. No, because then you've grown. That makes so much sense.
Yeah. I'm going to ask the question that I think we all want to know. And by all, I mean me and Joe. Why wings? How did the little it come to be? So you've decided, I'm going to quit my corporate job. What was that transition like? Did you already have this set up? Did you have an idea? Did you go backpacking across Europe for a year? What would you do after you're like, I'm going to quit?
So I quit, and then I was in a state of freeze for at least a year, or maybe 2 years, if I'm being honest, where I just kind of started floundering. But I think I was trying to find myself or get to know myself. And I had been so disconnected from my creativity that doing anything creative felt really, really scary. My sister had, I think they were 2 and 3 at the time, my niece and my nephew, and they loved to color and draw. So I would hang out with them because it was over COVID as well. So we were all a block away from each other, and we would see each other every day. And we would color together and do crafts together. And they were just like, "You're so good." And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." But I noticed that as I was just doing these crafts with the kids, my art brain was working. And of course, then TikTok was happening too. Because of all of the political stuff going on, I had curated my feed so that it didn't have anything that would make me sad on it. It was like therapy, craft, art, and sometimes cute things that would make me smile, but rarely, because I knew those were a distraction. I was like, no, I'm trying to learn. It was just like people doing so many crafty things with their houses, with their spaces, with their furniture, just like art in general. So I think playing with the kids, doing all of that, I started making little gifts for them, little things like that, and it sparked something. So then that's when I started making a few videos on TikTok on my personal account just to play around with it. Someone at a party, I think, told me, they were like, "I would watch you color," because we had a coloring table at the kids' party. They were like, I would just watch you color. And I was like, I think people do that on YouTube. I wonder if I could be a YouTube person who just colors. So my first attempt at that was just to color in this one coloring book that I had I was living with my parents. So it was at the kitchen table. I just did it. And I don't know if it did poorly or well, but it was kind of important to just learn how to do that, I guess. And so slowly over time, this all kind of built. But the dongs were a weird one. When I got my wisdom teeth removed, it was very impromptu. It was like I realized that something was happening with my wisdom tooth. I called my dentist, and he was like, "Yeah, come in, we'll look at it." And so he basically said he has time today. He was like, "Yeah, you want to just do it? It's not impacted, no big deal." So I was like, "Yeah, sounds good." He pulled out both my wisdom teeth, and I was wrecked. I was just on the couch healing for maybe a week, but I can't sit still. I don't like to just sit and not do anything. So I started crocheting, and I crocheted a wang. Oh my God, I have the bag near me. I can show you guys. But I just made one, and I was like, this just organically came out of my hand. I am creator. Like, can you believe this? And then I crocheted like 10 of them. That week I made so many, all of the yarn that I had. And I'm not a particularly good crocheter. I learned in the crochet club in the 7th grade. But I made so many. I was living with my partner at the time. And, I was supported. It was like, okay, that's weird, but sounds good. But since I was a kid, there was this one guy, John, who I don't know why, we probably drew penises on each other's papers in high school, because I thought that was hilarious. I would do that on everybody's notebook.
Funny.
But John asked me to draw a full page in his yearbook our senior year, and it was of a dong. So I was like, of course. I took my job very seriously, and it was a penis with a lasso riding a horse, I bet. Yeah, it had the little spurs, all the stuff. And I wrote him a whole page thing, and I drew him the page dong, and he would show everyone. He was so supportive. And so I would do stuff like that just throughout my years. But for some reason, crocheting the Weens, doing all of this, I had gotten myself an iPad at one point on a whim several years prior, when I was on one, and I was like, I'm going to become a digital artist. And I don't know what happened. I picked it up. I figured out how to do it slowly over time. I think because it's so not serious, my hand just goes to be like, oh yeah, I can just draw a dick. That'll be funny. So I start off with something funny, and then it kind of snowballed pretty big. But I think something like a really good sign as a creative is when you don't have to put effort into something, it just flows, kind of like what I was saying with the job. So I drew my first dong coloring page, and then I drew 4 more that week. And nothing had come to me that easily in the 2 years that I was plugged up. I had been trying all of this stuff, and granted, life had also gotten in the way. So there was all this family stuff that was occupying my time. But once it all kind of cleared up, my creativity started rolling. So I actually drew my first book. It's how people always say it, right? That first book poured out of me. I drew all of the pages in a month. It was like 40 or 50 pages of dongs in a month. And then so it was a lot longer for me to publish it because I had to get past all of the difficulties of not knowing the process and getting past the blocks internally. But the second I published my first book, I drew my second book. The following week, I drew like 90% of the next pages. And again, it took me another year to publish it, but it like all of the work actually comes through really quickly, which is so funny. So I can only assume that it's something I'm doing in alignment. But when I tell you, I have no idea why I draw dongs. Okay. Actually, I did this meditation once. Do you guys know the Satnam meditation? It's, I think, what's the Kundalini yoga method, and you just chant Satnam, and it's a breath pattern that you do as well. I was doing this Gabby Bernstein meditation in the shower, and I figured the water cleansing was going to be double effective, and I was like, let's fucking go. And I imagined myself as this Eskimo, like I have these big glasses on, this big fuzzy snow coat on, and it was a mountain. And so it would be like, Sut, and I would go to the top of the mountain, and she was really funny. She was like me, but in another dimension or another realm or something. And I would like, hop to the top, and she'd be like, yeah, and then she would ski down. So I was doing this meditation, I was cracking up. I was like, this bitch is funny, what's happening? And so it happened a bunch of times to where I was just kind of really in the rhythm, enjoying it. And then she gets less happy every time she gets to the top, and she starts like being really serious. And she was like, because Satnam, I guess, the way it was said in that meditation was truth revealed, but I think it means something slightly different. And then so it was like each time I was like, truth revealed, truth revealed. And then she starts weeping, and I see this woman like aerial view on the ground, and she's like yelling Satnam. She's like crying it. And I was like, so I'm crying, she's crying, we're all crying. But I was like, it's all been a mask. I have to be myself. And something about that really helped propel this forward, but I think really also ties in with the dongs, because I trick people. My goal is to trick people with the funny stuff and then really hit them with the spiritual stuff. And then I trap you with the funny, and then it's me weeping on the floor and you weeping with me, you know?
Oh my God, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I think it, and talking about the internal blocks and things like that, I'm sure there was some fear around this coming out, especially because the subject matter is NSFW. So what was that process like for you, where you went, no, I'm just going to be the person who does this thing that I think a lot of people would be, I don't want to say embarrassed or ashamed of, because like, I think it's really cool. And the funny thing is like, no one actually cares the way that we care. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to be on YouTube for like 3 years before I made a video, because I was like, oh my God, all my friends from high school, they literally don't give like an F at all. You know what I mean? No one's judging us. We just judge ourselves. So what was that process?
I think a lot of people are judging us too. If we're not feeling something invisible, a lot of people are judging, and it just has to be okay.
Well, I guess then I really like that perspective. How do you get to that place where you're like, I'm just going to do this. This is my thing, and I'm okay putting myself out there?
Okay, so it's weird because when I was a painter, I was a photorealistic painter. It would be just like you see a face, I would be able to replicate that face exactly, which was very stressful. It stressed me out.
Also
so bad.
incredible.
Thank you. But you
Girl,
know,
I can't even draw an eyeball. I can't even draw the shape of the eyeball.
It apparently isn't for you then. If you could draw the shape of an eyeball, it would pour out of you, right? Who knows? True. I wasn't doing anything remotely nude, remotely sexual. I had taken a figure drawing class once, I think when I was 18, and I had such an uncomfortable time drawing that man's penis. And I was just like, it's right there. It's just right there. I have to look at it as I draw. I don't understand. And we had to draw it so many times. And I remember being so uncomfortable at one point in my 20s where I was like, I wonder how mom and dad would feel if I painted nude. I wonder if that would be weird. Because then it's also the people that you know, or the people that get to meet you. It feels like they're seeing a sexual side of you, even though it's not particularly sexual, but it is sexual in context. So it feels like they're getting to know a part of you that's like taboo or something like that. It almost feels intimate in a strange way, because art is also very subconscious. I feel like it's very revealing if you don't know someone and they show you something that they've made from their subconscious. That's not necessarily a photorealistic piece of art, because that's pretty literal. But if I make you an abstract piece, that's me showing you what my emotions look like on paper, you know? So it's a very vulnerable thing to show people. And then when I can't explain why my insides are drawing this dumb shit, but they are, there's something particularly shameful, weird about it. Still now I'm choosy about who I'll share that with, because there are people that just react really weird to it and they're offended by it. They're not okay with that part of themselves, or they're not okay with that in general.
They're probably not okay with you being okay with it either.
Exactly. And I realized with those people and I can't be friends right now, and they can come find me if they ever get okay with it. I'm so happy for them. But at this point, we don't align. And I feel like whenever I'm met with judgment, that's just redirection on my end, because I'm like, oh, this person isn't for me. I'm just going to go this way.
I love that concept, actually, of that judgment being an actual mirror to be like, oh, that's not someone for me. Actually, that's really cool.
It hurts my feelings so badly when people are judgmental about this stuff. And I think initially I took it a lot harder, but now I'm like, this is arguably fucking funny. So if you don't think it is, then you're not funny. We can't hang out. I don't hang out with not funny people.
It's super amusing and it's fun. It reminds me of the scene in Superbad where the kid is like, he's like a dick Michelangelo and he's just drawing all these like doodles, but they're like incredible.
That movie came out, I think, when I was in high school. And that's probably why John had asked me to draw a dick in his yearbook. So I'm pretty sure that that movie indirectly inspired my career, or maybe directly.
That's incredible.
That is amazing. In college, I used to draw stick figures doing inappropriate things. And then I'd be like, can you pass the note down? And then the person would get, and they'd be like, what?
That's really
so
funny.
I never drew just penises.
I literally still have the drawings. I have them in like a scrapbook I made.
That's so funny.
We have so many parallels. I also did needle art, but mine is cross stitching, but I would often draw lots of dicks. I've got lots of dicks in thread.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Have you seen her cross stitching? It's this beautiful, like, cross stitching that like your grandma would make, but it says like, don't do coke in the bathroom. They're very hilarious and inappropriate. Actually, I mean, I've never even connected that. I mean, you guys are kind of kindred spirits in your own artistic ways.
You cross stitch, I embroider. So I actually have really inappropriate embroideries that I make, which is fucking
I do the
fun.
embroidery too. I love it. Of course we do.
That's amazing.
Oh my God.
We're going to have to exchange pictures of our embroideries soon.
Yeah, I'm going to make you one now.
Oh my God.
I know a lot of artists, and art is super subjective, right? And I think a lot of artists are really scared to show up as their true selves. You know, you always hear like the starving artist, or there's not a lot of confidence in art. And were you always just an artist? Is it this innate talent that you have? And since a lot of artists don't believe in themselves, or they second guess the art that they produce, are there any inspiring words or encouragement that you would have for them?
Man, you guys are asking such good questions. Yeah, I've been reflecting on this a lot. So I went to art school. I've been drawing. My mom says that I've been drawing ever since I could hold a pencil. My favorite thing to do was to sit with the adults and not talk at all, but I would just have my paper and my pencil and I would just draw quietly next to them. I would listen to the fun gossip they were talking about, and then I would just entertain myself, you know? My mom figured it out pretty quickly that I was into art, so she enrolled me in classes and stuff wherever she could. But I think about that now because there's this conception, I feel like societally, being an artist is somehow a career choice, a career path, as opposed to something that everyone is, because I think everyone has creativity. Even people that are like, I can't draw a straight line. I'm like, why would you need to draw a straight line? Draw a crooked line. It doesn't matter. You just have to draw. You have to make the mark that your heart wants to make on a piece of paper, you know? That's your emotions trying to get out. It's trapped energy. So there's this societal pretension almost when it comes to art, because you have to be taught all of the grammar, all of the words. It's opaque, it's transparent, this is gouache, this is acrylic. There's so much douchebaggery to it all that's all made up, because if Picasso took a piece of paper and drew a doodle on it, that would be worth millions. But for some reason, if you drew a doodle on a napkin, you're like, oh, this is trash, I'm going to throw this in the trash. it makes so much sense to me that people are creatively blocked because there's all this pressure, especially when you have the technical education to do this thing. You're like, I should be able to create something, but you don't know what's going on internally. You don't know how to decipher those feelings any better than anyone else. You almost intellectualize it. And I think that's where the block comes in. Have you ever heard that therapists are really bad to date?
Yeah.
And I think it's because I learned that only after trying to date a therapist. And turns out what I think happens is that you know too much. You have all of the words to define what's happening. So when you're experiencing an emotion, you're over intellectualizing it and you're processing it cerebrally. That's not a word. You're thinking it instead of feeling it. And then so you think that you've worked through something because you've thought through it, but emotions and thoughts are very different and they process it very different. And I think that's what it is with artists too. You know all of the words, you know all of the concepts, you know how the eye flows or how you want it to feel, but you almost know too much to get started. And that's what plugs you up, is the overthinking. My favorite thing to do is, it's called art journaling, that you take a sheet of paper and you take a couple of art supplies that you really are like hyped on, like the kind that make your inner child really happy. So it could be like a blue highlighter, a sparkle pen, stamps, whatever, it doesn't matter. And then anything your scumbag brain says, you just kind of do it. It'll be like scribble and you'll be like, and you have to really put your back into it. And it's so strange, but you'll know when you're done. Cause like after you let yourself make all the scribbles you want, you can like rip it, you can burn it, you can do anything. But once you're done, you're done. And if you look at it, the way it looks is the way that you feel. And it's so interesting. It's worked for me 100% of the time because I have such a hard time making sense of what's going on internally. And then the second I do that, I'm like, oh, that's what it is. That's what I feel. And there's no words.
That's so cool. Once you mentioned that, get hyped about art products that you like, do you guys remember those pens that had like 1,000 colors around the top and you could like push the thing in? Yeah. Oh my God. Like I want to go get one of those and draw with it right now. Like I literally feel excited to try this. That's so cool.
I just got my niece one of those.
Oh, it reminds me of The Artist's Way. I never finished The Artist's Way. I got about halfway through and then my ADD took over. But I did get to the point where I was like, oh, I'm an artist. I forgot I do have this capability of being an artist. And to your point, people think that they're not artists, that they're too left brain or they're too logical or whatever. But the reality is we all have that in us. It's whether you want to set it free or not. And just because you draw and I use string doesn't mean that these are the modalities that anyone should use. There's so many other options out there. And to just do it for fun, to just release, to allow the creativity, to allow the flow, to like, when you're doing something like that too, I find that my brain works out problems because I might be overthinking about something, or the opposite is I won't be thinking at all and I'll be totally free and immersed in what I'm doing, that it also creates space in my brain. It's just so many positives.
Mm-hmm.
I resonate so hard with that. I'm a big knowledge dork. I love facts and learning about what I get immersed in. So I went to film school. I had like a myriad of things I went to school for, and then was like, you don't even need to go to film school really. But then I couldn't watch a movie without overanalyzing it or noticing something. And I had to get far enough away from the knowledge to actually start enjoying films again. So what would you advice-wise give to someone who they want to immerse themselves and learn everything and increase their skill in whatever modality? But is there an inflection point, or is there a way to learn but also not become hostage to the knowledge that ruins the feeling and the creativity?
For me, it's instead of putting the pressure on myself to make something that's just as good, this is going to sound cocky, but I feel like there's a very limited amount of creativity currently being exhibited in the world. You watch things go viral, right? Like all of the trends that go on. People like to do what other people are doing, and it's hard to think of a new thing that someone else isn't already doing. And then the second someone thinks of it, other people start to as well. So it really can't be that you're trying to keep up with anything that already exists, because you can't. It doesn't make any logical sense. And it's also super limiting to even try to make something that's similar to anything else, because our creativity is endless, right? If I'm really stuck on something, I like to think about it in different perspectives. So if I'm making a logo for a client, for example, we'll talk about the concept, we'll mark it up. And then when I'm doing the initial sketches, because I'll present them with maybe like 50 to 100 sketches of things that it could be to kind of give us direction as to where we're going to go. And then I'll be like, okay, well, what would it look like from a back perspective, from a top-down perspective, from whatever perspective? And suddenly you're drawing something that you've never drawn in a direction you've never drawn it. It makes your brain think outside of the box completely. And I think once you realize that the ideas are endless and you just have to make something, like whatever sounds really fun, you have to go with that. Go with something that's fun, go with something that's funny, and just try to entertain yourself, and it's going to turn out good. I feel like I make things for my inner child, and luckily it's been resonating with other people's inner children. But I think that's how we're supposed to talk to each other, because we're just a bunch of babies in adult bodies.
Yes. I heard an artist once, he was saying he was I think he was a painter. And he said when he was taking breaks, letting the paint dry or whatever, he would often flip the painting upside down or sideways and then walk away from it. So that when he came back to it, he was looking at it with a fresh perspective, as opposed to looking at exactly the way that it was every single time. And so even just turning it around, when he would leave and come back into the studio and see it upside down, and then flip it back over, he'd be able to look at it objectively and say, oh, here's actually the direction I want to go, or the things I want to change. Just perspective. It's literally just perspective is all you're talking about.
My trick was always to hold it up against a mirror, because when it reflects it, that's where you see all of the things that they're flipped around, they look different. So that's why I love Mercury retrograde, because everything kind of flips the other way and you can see where it's not symmetrical in the perfect places, it kind of like mirrors things on you.
Yeah. And this is a good segue, because we really haven't talked as much about the spiritual stuff. And that's a huge component of who you are. Lilit has an incredible gift of reading human design charts. She read one for me and I was gushing the whole time. Like, I never felt more seen. I felt like I got so much direction, and it was like a 15-minute voice note, and it was one of the best voice notes I've ever gotten. And I'm so grateful for it still. I definitely gushed about it to her directly. But your spiritual component, can we talk about that a little bit? Like how you started to delve into that and how that evolved from this leaving the corporate and then having this time with your family. And I know you mentioned like your family was really supportive. Were they supportive with the spiritual stuff too?
Yeah, my grandma fancies herself a witch doctor, and growing up, she always she took like evil eyes off of us, did a bunch of like juju things. We would sleep with this, I don't know what kind of metal it is, but she would like melt it over a pot on our heads, and then we would sleep with it under our pillows. It was a whole thing. So we've always been super witchy. Oh, my mom and my grandma also read coffee cups. So since the 7th grade, they've just like said things that were going to happen. And they're both so annoying because they see the same stuff, but they forget what they've said before. So they just repeat the same thing. And spiritual time is so different than like time, I remember when I was in the 7th grade, my mom would be like, you're going to fall in love. It's going to be this person. You're going to fall in love. And she would say it every single time for 2 years, which for a 7th grader is like very fucking annoying. It's like a very long time. But finally in the 9th grade, the person that was like my boyfriend or whatever for 2 weeks, I heard about it for 2 years for a person that I dated for 2 weeks. And it was literally how they described him. We met in the exact same way that they described. It was my confirmation that this was real, because they had just said it so many things over and over again, just repeated at me that just happened, which now, did they manifest it? I don't know, whatever. But then it happened again at senior year of high school. And for the 2 years after, they just kept repeating that I'm going to stop talking to a girl because of a guy, and something's going to happen. And then they would like tie it all back in. They'd be like, something's going to happen, but it'll be okay. You guys will be friends again, or something like that. It was like the biggest high school scandal of my life. But two of my best friends ended up dating, and I was like, it fucking happened. It was the coffee cup, So there was something very validating about these two really significant life events that repeated. So that was all the confirmation that I needed that woo-woo exists. Like, there is something, I don't know what it is. And also, since I was a kid, my mom She taught me how to pray. There's like a specific thing that you're supposed to say in Armenian as you're praying, but I couldn't remember it. Like for the life of me, I couldn't remember a single word of it. So I was like, whatever, this is stupid. Why would I have to say this before? So I would just pray every night. But I would question it even as a kid. This doesn't make sense. Who is God? What is that? I'm just going to say what I'm grateful for today, and then I'm going to say what I want. Because as I grew up, I also learned that that's really good for your memory. It's really good for your brain to recall things that happened that day. And then you're setting intentions, right, for the next day. So I was like, great, I'll keep doing it for my brain. And I noticed that whenever I was in the habit of, I called it praying still, whenever I was in the habit of praying before bed, my life would go better. And whenever I kind of got out of habit, it would be worse somehow. I figured I'll just keep doing that. And slowly I was making these connections where, you know, when you get a job and then you meet this person and then all of these random things happen, but they kind of come together like a zipper. Once that happened a few times, I think I noticed that too. And I was like, no, this is something bigger than me for sure. I for sure believe in something. I don't know what it is. And I think slowly over time, I've just been making my own belief system where people will share things and either it resonates or it doesn't. If it doesn't resonate, I forget it immediately. But if it resonates, I'm like, great. Yes, I totally believe that. And I've just been building this little system. So the last few years, as I was going on this business journey, I was simultaneously going on a spiritual journey. Oh, human design happened the same way, where I saw my chart, I YouTubed some things, and then it turned, like that whole day turned into me just learning everything I could about human design. I got all the free resources. My printer was going crazy printing off stuff. And I had already texted all of my friends for their birth info so I could get their charts, and I was comparing things and I was calling people and I was like, do you know that this says on your chart? So like within a day of really learning it, I was obsessed. I was telling everyone about it. I ended up joining a human design school online that I could learn from. And that was so fun because we got to read for each other, which was the most validating thing ever when you read for people who also read human design. And they're like, I've not heard that before. What even made you think that? And so it's been really fun practicing with them because they'll read my chart in a specific way that teaches me things, that we're teaching each other in a different way and validating each other a lot of the time because it's such an intuitive thing. How do you know you're good at reading human design if it's not the people that you read for resonate with it, you know? Learning about myself, having this chart, this little body graph, be able to call me out for exactly who I am. Like there's not one part of it that misses. I can't point at a single part of my chart where I'm like, no, that's not me. It's crazy. So then when I look at other people's, I have zero doubt because I have inspected mine so deeply and there's no plot holes. So there's just been like all of these life experiences that were very affirming. And I don't know if you guys remember your spiritual awakenings, but I felt my first one around 26. I hit another one around 28, 29. And I think I'm at the close of my last one and I'm so tired and I'm hoping that sure, more information is going to flow, but it's been the constant influx of just learning new things and talking to spiritual people and understanding how similar we are and how we all believe the same things. We're all coming to the same conclusions and speaking the same language that resonates so much with each other. It's so cool.
So cool.
It's interesting how I always talk about law of attraction or spirituality. It's like eggs, like you can make an egg 100 different ways, but you do kind of arrive at a similar conclusion. It's just based on what works for a particular person. I was talking about this a couple months ago, doing the inner work and healing and going through a spiritual awakening in the process. I'm like, at one point I was like, dude, is it over? Like, am I done yet? Like, I just, you know what I mean? It never ends. But at some point, there's some point where you're just like, can it just be done? Can I just be enlightened now, please?
Well, because it's also always bred by a very terrible life event, you know, something that breaks all of your beliefs down to where you're like, oh, I know nothing. I surrender completely. And then life can come in and teach you what you're supposed to know. I don't know if you guys have looked at your astrocartography charts, but where I am now live really close to my Pluto line, which has been described to me as unfavorable. It's like Pluto I feel it too. They were like, you could become very easily jaded there. And it's true. In human design, Pluto is where you can stand to learn. It's transformation. And so I felt my line runs through San Diego, and I'm right in LA. And it's basically uncomfortably close. And my entire life has been a series of literal transformations where I was this party girl who was a very specific way in high school, and then a little bit of college. And then in my 20s, I changed to a completely different person. And now I feel myself being not a completely different person, but my belief system has flopped. So it's like the same person, but with a belief system that I had no idea. I feel like life keeps throwing me these experiences where I'm reminded that I know nothing and that I need to stop expecting anything of it and just shut up and learn. So it's hard, but I'm grateful for it, but it's really, I need to move.
It's the saying is where you have this pain and you carry the stone and the pain doesn't actually change. You just get stronger. It's more like we become more humble, we become more graceful, we become more patient. The things that we can deal with now are greater because we've already been through so many things, but it's not like we want to keep going through things. We just learn how to deal with them better and we have more tools. And like you said, your beliefs have changed as a result of that. I think at the end, we're always grateful for these bad things that have happened usually. But when you're in it or when you're at the doorstep, it sucks. So do you have any strategies or advice for people that might be kind of feeling something like that?
Yes, journal every day if you can. You know, when they say journal every day, and I'm not someone that can do that. I'm neurodivergent for sure, and I can't do things like that regularly or at a specific set time. But there's something about the artist's way. Journaling for 3 pages, you can only bullshit yourself for 1, maybe 2 pages because it like your hand's tired. It's not like an easy thing to do. That's why if you're doing it, typing it, sure, do it. But when you're writing it out, your hand is almost calling you out on the bullshit that you're trying to spew. You're like, bro, you're wasting my time. Stop. So Artist Way says journal 3 pages a day, and I'm still trying to get into the habit of doing it. But I've noticed that keeps me more honest than anything else has been. I can lie to myself so well, but if I'm writing it down, I weirdly can't lie to myself. And that's been
it's almost like, why
helpful.
waste the time?
And so when you catch yourself avoiding the task, you know you're lying to yourself about something. You're like, what am I hiding from myself? Because I'm like a little like gremlin trying to like say all of these things that I don't want to feel. And then so I'll write and I catch myself for a page where I'm dragging my ass trying to get through this page, and it's because I'm bullshitting. And the second I get honest is the second things start to go better, and the second that I stop journaling is when my mood gets worse somehow. I don't know how. My mood is just somehow worse. My days go worse. It's the same thing as praying before bed. I don't know what it does, but it does something.
The hand cramping is real. I didn't even realize. I thought it was just me because I like to write in general with a pencil, but you're right. At page 2, you're like, oh, my little fingers hurt. I don't want to keep doing this. And there is a weird thing to push through. It's so funny to hear you talk about that because I thought that was my own experience.
It's almost a sacrifice you're making. Journaling isn't easy because you have to sit there with yourself and give your thoughts space, and you have to inconvenience yourself to do it. But once you do it, it's like your body's so grateful that it's almost better all day because you gave it that time to get all of the stuff out ahead of time.
You know, and I was in the habit of doing that for several months and I haven't been lately. And it's all that stuff that's just like cooking around in my brain that I haven't been able to get out and kind of reminding me. What I really like about it is posing questions to myself. How often do you sit and go, why is this bothering me? Or like, what's the root of this issue? But it's people don't give themselves that space. And now there's literally not a time unless you schedule it in to be bored or think your thoughts, because you can just grab your phone and be like, well, I'm in line, so I'm just going to stare at my phone now.
That's why I loved those journal prompts when I was in my earlier 20s and not really awake yet. At the time, blogs were still a thing. So I just Googled 30 blog topics for 30 days because I didn't want to talk about anything real. My defense mechanism has always been to just not be vulnerable and to laugh things off, just make a joke out of everything. So I almost had to trick myself into starting to journal because it's way too intimidating to start talking about your feelings right off the bat. It would be like, what's your favorite color and why? And I was like, it's gold. I love gold because whatever. And I would write a little bit about it and I'd be like, this is stupid. But I got to know myself through those topics. So it didn't feel like a waste of time because it was asking me these silly questions about myself and I was taking time to respond in a curious way. And since I was responding genuinely, it felt that like my subconscious would like reveal a little bit more. I still have that journal, and for some reason it helped me learn a lot without being too much pressure.
I love it. It's so inspiring. I think you've inspired both of us to start going back to journaling a bit more.
I know you're obviously a creative person and you're an entrepreneur. What are some of the kind of entrepreneurial things, advice-wise, that you can give to other creatives or just entrepreneurs in general? Because obviously you've been able to make a full-time career and build a business doing something that brings you joy. And you're funny and you're intelligent, but you found a way to be funny in what you like, share that gift with your business, which I think is really cool. And that probably is part of the reason why it's so successful. Long question, but one thing you said that really resonated with me is talking to people's inner children. It's kind of like those videos on TikTok that I put no effort into get the most views because I'm communicating directly with people's inner children. What advice would you give to other entrepreneurs who want to either be creative or just be business savvy or share their gift with others?
Well, I would say just start posting on social media because it's embarrassing as hell. So I am fully behind starting a new account and blocking anyone who's, and that's suggested where it's like, do you know this person? And you're like, hell no, I don't. And you block them. You don't even exit out. I blocked every single person. I was like, no, I'm speaking to the void because the plan was to just throw stuff at the wall. You're getting to know yourself through that as well, So you can't be judgmental. You have to be curious. Otherwise you'll freeze up. So you just start posting videos and you don't care about views. You just have to get into the habit of finding when it's easiest for you or how it's easiest for you and try. Because your first video is going to be trash probably, but you're going to get better with everything. Every time you do it, every time you repeat the process, you're going to fix it a little bit and like find your voice, your way. You know how all the stuff you learned in production, I bet now translates over in the smallest way into TikTok editor. So you develop your styles, the tools that you like using, the tools that you don't like using. So you just have to play with it in order to do it. But my second and equally important advice would be to get an accountant that you trust, because often creatives are not great with the paperwork. And I don't know what it is. My taxes specifically have caused me so much stress because it's not that I don't know what I'm doing. I've taken courses. I've tried so hard to understand. ChatGPT and I talk about it all the time. But regardless, there's something about my body that's like, if I have to just pay the IRS this much money, I'm going to accidentally go to the wrong website and pay it. I don't know what it is, which is a true story, by the way.
Wait, you paid the wrong website?
Instead of IRS, I paid the state of California what I owed the IRS. So then months later, I get this bill that's even higher than before. And it's like, you didn't pay us in time. You have to pay this late fee now. So anyway, that's when I changed my accountant because he didn't realize I needed that much hand holding. And so I found someone that, again, in a cosmic way, where now this man, I swear, he knows my mom too, which I'm so grateful for. But he's like, hey, this is never going to happen again. And if it does, we're going to take care of it. And I feel like just knowing that there's someone that's good at papers and numbers that is willing to take my phone calls and talk to me really has resolved this weird block that I had internally. Because I have filed every tube paper since I've had a job incorrectly. 1 year, they withheld my taxes for a full year and I was getting paid hella. I was so excited. And then I did my taxes and I owed a fuck ton of money. And so I called HR and I was like, hey, what's happening? And they were like, well, did you mark yourself as exempt? And I remember my words exactly. No, that would be fucking stupid. And she pulled up my paper. She literally had it scanned in the computer. She's like, you marked yourself as exempt. So, and that was not the only time I've done something like that. I don't know what it was. It was spirit speaking through me, being like, no, we're going to fuck this up a lot so that you need help in this arena.
That's so fascinating. I'm kind of the eye opener on that second one. They're both super valuable, but finding someone who's a stakeholder that fills one of those gaps, like we all have that thing that for whatever reason, we can't do it confidently because maybe there's been issues in the past or we just hate it, right? And so if you find a stakeholder that can fill that gap, it allows you to be so much more confident in just everything.
It's the dream. Yeah. I saw him yesterday at my mom's house. I gave him the biggest hug. I played with his kids for like 30 minutes.
That's so cute.
It's amazing.
Thank you so much for being here and being so vulnerable and so candid. I haven't stopped smiling the whole episode, I don't think.
Yeah, you're awesome. Like, I mean, it's our first time meeting, obviously, but like, you're so smart and well spoken, and there's so many like knowledge bombs. Like, I'm stoked that we got to connect.
Yeah, do you see why I'm obsessed with her?
Yeah, you're awesome. You're legit cool.
No, this is so much fun.
Really?
I feel like we've been bouncing off of each other's energies. You guys are making my brain work better.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I'm so grateful for you being here. Everybody, you have to go check out her coloring books. I'll put links to all of them. Don't judge it. Just color it. Just order one. Get one for your grandma, your grandpa, your neighbor, maybe the mailman. Everyone deserves to have a wang that they can color.
What are your social links?
On TikTok, I'm at _it. And on Instagram, I'm at @it.
Oh, nice. And then your products are available on Amazon, Etsy, and also TikTok Shop, I believe.
Yeah. Thank you for the plugs.
Hell yeah. Of course.
Of course. We want everyone to go buy all the coloring books. Sell her out.
Sell me out, please.
Please. Why not?
Please. But yeah, you guys, this was literally a blast. This was so much fun. Thank you so much.
It was so much fun. And thank you all for watching. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.